Let me be your leader.
What did you know about China before you came here?
I didn't know a whole lot about China before we came here. When I was a kid, my mom read us the story of Ping and a couple other, maybe just that one though. I knew that they were communists. I didn't know that communist didn't mean communist at the present day. Capitalism with Chinese characteristics is much different than how we picture communism. I mean, Chinese food, obviously, and actual good Chinese food, in addition to crappy Chinese food. And for some reason, I knew the fact that most Chinese people on the East Coast came from like Fujian province. But I don't know why I knew that. That was an oddly specific thing to know. But not a whole lot, I would say.
Can you take a guess why that might be why didn't you know?
I mean, some of it was honestly my own interest and a little bit racist, I guess. I was much more interested in Europe and European history because that was what I was taught in school and that's what my ancestry was, and it just seemed more immediately accessible without having to like do any extra digging on my own. Like, we learned, not that I know it now, but we learned like the Stuart succession of royals in England, which is, you know, useless knowledge to me now. Useless knowledge to me then. I mean, the easy answer is it just didn't come up.
Is there anything that you expected China to be that it isn't, that you wish it was?
Well, I don't wish it was anything. It is what it is. I guess I wish it was closer if I wanted to see my family ever again. I think I was surprised, even in the teeny tiny middle of nowhere small town that we moved to, like how modern it felt. Because that was one thing that we had learned before we came to China, was like that, you know, China they've had a slow development and they're just catching up, but they're behind us and technologically blah, blah, blah. But like even down to like these days, I mean, Luzhou is maybe like a year or two behind the cool places in China, but like when the cool places in China are adopting a trend, it's kind of all over the world. I can't, like, okay, so those faux fur, like obviously faux fur vests they'd be like purple and like, I don't know. They seemed to be popular a few years ago and I was like, this is a weird Chinese trend. And then in media, I saw, oh, it's a weird everywhere trend. So like stuff like that, how trendy they managed to be despite being so far away. I feel like I'm answering a different question.
What did you expect it to be?
I had very little expectation, to be honest. I expected it to be like lonely and full of free time, which it kind of was. But like when we were preparing to move here, we rented a Learn Mandarin DVD from Netflix that was like your basics count to 10 for children. And then we watched some art house movie about a troupe of artists, theater performers in northern China in like, I don't even know what time period it was supposed to be during, but it was just like a bunch of teenage actors laying around on stone edifices, not really even buildings, but just like there were big stones around and teens having malaise, and that was the movie. And so I was like, I guess it'll be like that. But honestly, like as our flight approached to come here, I had like a big blank. I knew what our life would be, even though like quitting my job and selling all our stuff was like vastly different to any other adulthood that I've ever had. Like I could know what that routine would be like, and I couldn't picture what our routine might be like after that. So I really had no expectation. I had an expectation of nothing.
Who is your favorite Chinese?
Who is my favorite Chinese? That's such a weird question.
Why is it weird?
I mean, who is your favorite Canadian? Bryan Adams. No, not even a little. Now I'm stuck on who's my favorite Canadian. It's weird to pick a country and pick out the favorite person. I mean, I almost feel like you're baiting me to say Jackie Chan, because that's the stupid obvious answer. He's a great man, and I don't know if he's a great man actually. He's a great performer.
But you've had people ask you that question though before.
Have
Chinese
I?
people. You haven't? I have.
Oh, maybe I have. But I feel like they mean performer, not like Linda is my favorite Chinese person.
I always find that's the hard thing in the moment. How do I answer that is, it's a quick, because you want to give an answer fast.
Yeah,
and somebody,
I mean, I'm terrible at answering who is your favorite anything. Like I covered art for New York City. That's almost as absurd a statement. Covered art for a New York City newspaper for a long time, and someone once asked me who my favorite artist was, and I could not think of any artist. And actually, I could not give you an answer to that question right now. I'm gonna blame the question and say my favorite anything is the experience I'm having in the moment. So my favorite Chinese band might be, well, they're not even Chinese, but they are in China, but Round Eye, because we saw them last.
So whatever you saw last is your favorite?
Basically. And you can make me sound dumb like that, but it's more about like, experience isn't all that lasting, so it is like, what's the experience I had lately? Now I'm making myself sound dumb.
Do you think?
That occupies the slot of, here's what happened to you recently.
That's like any kind of like Facebook or social media, or even just like a friend at a bar always asks, what's your favorite?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's...
I hate that question.
Do you feel like that is accentuated over? Like it, I mean, we had to be super guarded whenever I was asked, and it was usually by students or something.
Yeah.
But it is like, I want to be very careful to answer this, but I also want a witty answer.
Well, that's the problem. There is like, the hipster in me wants to have the right answer. And then like knowing I'm a cultural representative in an area to a population where they don't meet many foreigners, there is like a weight of like, fair or no, my answer is gonna represent all Americans to the asker, potentially. My favorite Chinese person is my co-teachers, because I see them every day and they do a great job at a job that's really difficult, and they make my job easier. So that's my honest answer. Teacher Carly and Teacher Wendy are my favorite Chinese people. To a question that's dumb.
What do you think is different from America?
Since we got to China, I think maybe even following the cycle of culture shock, wherein like you kind of have longer waves of acceptance, and then you return to shock, and then you have longer waves of acceptance. I go through periods where I'm like, China and America are the same. We all want, we all eat chicken and pork, and we all like watching TV, and we all like being with people who are kind to us, and blah, blah, blah. And then I feel like, oh my God, there's nothing the same. And Solaris is right, and it's impossible to know what any other human being is thinking, let alone someone from another culture and another language, and it's impossible to communicate the human condition, and we're all just solipsistic pods of nonsense. So does that answer your question? I mean, there's stuff. I'm a practical person, or I'm a blunt person. So what I find like that affects me most directly is directness and the way of getting things done. And that the Chinese way of communicating is a lot more of like assuming from context what's going on versus me just saying what I want from you and you saying, fine, I'll do it. And fortunately with the people I work with, they understand that there's a bit of this gap, so they don't think I'm horribly rude. But I know that I don't quite understand Chinese etiquette and that I'm trampling all over situations sometimes like a buffalo. But in the end, I get things done, which is the most important to me, which is the most maybe American thing about me. So that's I think a big difference. Was that your question?
Well, it's the difference about you, I guess, as an American. That's something.
I mean, also practically is like, because I'm a foreigner, the police come and check in on us every month. Although we just found out that that's not true for every foreigner, even in Luzhou. It's just the neighborhood we live in. We have to like sign a document every month. All foreigners in our neighborhood have to sign a document. But like the interactions with the police, just being like given permission to exist. I think even, not that immigrants to the United States have it easy by any means. I think we put them through a very rigorous system and a very expensive system. But I don't think they need like written monthly permission to exist in a space. Although I could be wrong, a lot has changed about America since we left. I think also, like, it's hard to say from Luzhou because Luzhou is very specifically this small town. It doesn't, there are things about it that's like Chinese, and then there's like, this is just Luzhou. Like people staring at us, and so, taking our picture hasn't happened so often. But like that won't happen in a bigger city because it's not so special to be a foreigner. Like we live in a place where like maybe in a city of 4 million, there's a couple hundred foreigners, which is a very different situation. So it's hard to say like, I mean, this is what I've been saying since we figured it out, but like, it's hard to say, well, this is China and what versus, well, that's just what your small town is like, or your big city.
Well, then that brings me to my next question. Who is better?
The small town or big city?
China or America?
都可以. That's always my answer when people ask that, and it just means well, they're both all right.
And what's your real answer?
I never pick a side because everywhere sucks. Everywhere has its problem, and I'm like not really happy to be anywhere. I would find something to be annoyed by, I think, living anywhere. Even in the mythical progressive land of Scandinavia, it would be way too cold. And I don't like death metal that much. So that's my answer to that polarizing question. Your hometown sucks.
Are you happy here?
Yeah, because at the same time, I mean, I think I'm wired to be pretty content with life. I think that's just my personality. And like moving here was a good choice for us. And complaining about here and everywhere. Complaining makes me happy.
Are you glad that you're here or in America right now, 2021?
Geez. Asking the tough questions. I mean, I'll say on the record, from afar, the handling of the coronavirus pandemic in America seems like a hot mess. And you know, I hear reports that from inside it also feels that way. So that specifically it feels better to be here, and having lived a relatively normal existence since last March. I mean, my mom keeps asking me, you know, is your gym closed? Is this closed? Is this closed? Because they keep going through periodic openings and closures. But after we contained the initial outbreak, we've lived a normal life. And you know, we have to like swipe QR codes when it gets the potential for spread is greater. So we have to be tracked, which, you know, in an authoritarian government is maybe not the most delectable option. But I don't know, I felt really safe during all of this.
So you live in Sichuan. Do you eat the spice?
I do eat the spice, even though sometimes I shouldn't. But everybody loves this question, and everybody loves that answer. I do like spicy food. I always liked spicy food, and it always was something of a challenge for my digestive system. I've gotten used to it somewhat. Well, the last time we went back to America, we were having spicy, and I was like, we were having spicy food, not spicy. And I was like, can I get some hot sauce? This isn't spicy. And my family was like, whoa. So like my palate has changed a little bit, but it still is like, I'm still in the kiddie pool in terms of Sichuan cuisine. Although I do have my own pepper plant, so we even put our own fresh peppers on our own home cooking.
You're moving from Luzhou, Sichuan, to Chongqing. Are you afraid to leave the spice?
Well, Chongqing is also spicy, and as my coworker informed me yesterday, it's even hotter in the summer than Luzhou is, which that I'm not looking forward to. But Chongqing is spicy, and so we will continue to spice girls.
Do you know much about other Chinese food? Not spicy Chinese food?
I know the broad strokes of like Cantonese cuisine tends towards the sweeter side, and Northern cuisine is very hearty and mutton based, but also I think not spicy. Yunnan cuisine kind of starts to it's also spicy, but like in a more Thai, that peninsular region kind of spice. It starts to share that flavor profile. It's hard because spice is the obnoxious, loud YouTuber at the front of the download pack. That metaphor got tortured before it even left the gate. But spice is just so loud and up front that like more delicate cuisines do take a back seat, especially when you live in Sichuan. If we maybe lived somewhere else, if we lived in like Shanghai, I'm sure I would know more about Shanghainese cooking.
How good is your Chinese?
Oh geez, it's terrible. And then I keep saying that to people who don't speak Chinese at all, and they're like, you're such a liar. I have good functional Chinese. I can get us around town, and I even can fool people if they're not looking directly at me when giving, in the very specific situation of giving a taxi directions or ordering food. I can fool people into not realizing I'm not Chinese, but only in those two specific situations. I have a hard time having a conversation, and that's a little bit because I have a hard time having a conversation in English as well. I'm just shy, so I don't take advantage of the opportunity that's all around me to talk to people in their native language, which is frustrating. I was talking to Peter the other day. I mean, because my goal is fluency, and we moved here specifically to the center of the country without a large expat population, so that I would be forced to speak Chinese and not everyone would speak English, because I needed those circumstances. But it does mean like I have very few milestones between not speaking Chinese and fluency, and I feel like I'm failing every test every day, even though I know that my Chinese has improved considerably, and I can understand quite a lot. I just can't like talk to people about cool stuff. I can only order cool food. And, you know, 加油.
When will you be happy that you've learned enough?
Oh my God, never. But that's like broadly true. That's not just Chinese language.
How much Chinese do you want to know?
All of it, and I want to invent some. I want to invent the next duang.
Why are you not at home? Do you miss your family?
Do you mean right this second? I'm not at home because I'm out going to dinner.
Your home of birth.
Home of birth. I mean, yes, I miss my family, but I also wanted to see the world. I always, back to the books I read as a kid, I always liked those adventure novels or those, actually a lot of frontier novels, like where kids would set out, and you know, kids live on their own in the wilderness is a whole genre that seems ridiculous as an adult, but I took it deadly serious as a kid. I always knew I wanted to go out and see the world. And then we got here, and it's easier just to stay here than go back and forth.
And why here? Why China? Of all the places in the world.
I mean, I don't have a good answer for this, to be honest.
What's a bad answer?
It was purely the amount of work to quality of life ratio that we knew would be available to us. Because the one thing that we did know once we started researching it, everybody that we knew had a friend of a friend who taught in China. And their experiences were you could live like a king for not working very hard. And that appealed to me. And then like the challenge of the language that came second. Although it's now a very important part of my living in China. And learning about such a different culture. I mean, there's no, well, it's tough to say. I mean, it's, like I did study abroad I did study abroad sometime in university, in Spain. And Spain is pretty different from American culture, but there's enough rooted common culture that I can make sense of where things come from. And then my other friend did study abroad in Ireland, and I teased her like, you didn't go abroad at all. Although Ireland and America are very different. But China seemed like a chance to get a perspective that was very, very different from my own. But these are all like after the fact justifications of like, we didn't want to live in America anymore, and we wanted to find the easiest way to do it. And that for us was coming to China and teaching and making the movies.
So given that opportunity, how do you personally use that advantage of living in China?
I mean, in the economic sense is that I only work 15 hours a week, and I spend my time writing and working on movies that we want to make. But philosophically, I feel like it's kind of entrenched my view that all societies are just arbitrary, but abiding by those arbitrary norms has come to be important. I mean, this is the alien from a different planet perspective of me. But like everything you think of as a given in your life is not. I mean, gravity is not a cultural norm, but a lot more is cultural norms than what you think is a cultural norm. And I feel like the world could use, everybody should move to China, except don't, you're not ready for it. But everybody could use a heaping helping of my norms are just my cultural norms, and other people's life experience is also valuable. And you should listen to people when they talk about their life experience, and maybe, you know, I don't know, Black Lives Matter is where I'm going with this. So like, not everybody should move to China to understand Black Lives Matter. In fact, do not do that. But I feel like that's a dose of perspective that we all could use more of. also, I want to caveat, like, Chinese people aren't here to tell me a life lesson. They're also just living their lives. And I just in case, like, it came off too much, like, they taught me so much about blah, blah, blah. No, it's like seeing everyone live their life and then seeing some people live it in a different way but still live a life. Come on, people. You're all crazy.
Will you stay in China?
Yes. For a while. We don't have plans to leave. I mean, there is definitely an end date to this in that the Chinese government does not want us to permanently settle in China. But for now, while we have stuff to do, we're gonna stay.
And what do you have to do, and how long do you think it will take?
Well, the legitimate legal thing I have to do is teach people of all ages, soon to be adults. I'm so excited.
You're teaching adults. Your students aren't becoming adults tomorrow.
No,
You're moving.
That would be, although that would be another reason to stay, is see out this time travel technology that I'm working on. Creatively, we have a couple stories that we want to tell that are set in China, a couple of films we want to make. I mean, we lived here so long. I don't know, this is from day to day a little bit different. Like, some days it feels like our apartment is our home, and then I go outside and I forget, like, oh yeah, it's all China out here. But also, living here for so long doesn't feel like living in China as like a category of thing to do. It just feels like this is our life. And, you know, I say this every time you bring this up. I do not like the division of that what I'm doing is special versus just everybody else who's trying to live a life, wherever they are, and whether they're in their home country or not. And I will admit there are unique challenges of being a immigrant living in China, but there's also advantages, which is why we're here.
And you call yourself an immigrant? You're comfortable with that?
Yeah, let's take the lid fully off this progressive soup. Expat is often used as a term to denote that the person who has moved country is wealthy and probably white, versus immigrant, which is someone who's moved country and has a connotation of maybe they're poor or moving for economic reasons, which, you know, we also moved for economic reasons. So, I mean, I think, yeah, we're an immigrant. We do not live in the country in which we were born. I'll say it. Tell everyone. I'm not from here.
That is all. Goodbye.